Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the massive trade station grow larger through the main screen. Kepler Station looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with dozens of docking arms reaching out to welcome ships from across the galaxy. Each arm held vessels from different worlds, some sleek and silver, others covered in strange crystals that glowed with their own light. Sarah had been stationed here for 2 years now, ever since Earth joined the Terran Centauri Galactic Alliance. It still felt like a dream sometimes. Just 50 years ago, humans thought they were alone in the universe. Now they were part of a peaceful group of 12 different species that had been working together for over 300 years. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss and Commander James Park walked in carrying a datapad. His face looked worried, which was unusual for James. He was normally the calm one on the crew. "Captain, we just got a message from Alliance Command," he said, handing her the pad. "The Vex are demanding another meeting." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. The Vex were the reason everyone looked worried these days. They were a group of insect-like aliens who controlled a large empire on the edge of known space. For the past year, they had been attacking independent worlds and demanding that the Alliance give them territory and resources. "When and where?" Sarah asked, reading through the message. "Tomorrow, here on Kepler Station. Warprime Zextak is coming himself this time." Sarah nodded slowly. Warprime Zextak was the leader of the Vex military forces. If he was coming in person, it meant the situation was getting more serious. The Alliance had always solved problems through talking and trade agreements. Violence was something they tried to avoid at all costs. "Any word on what they want this time?" she asked. James shook his head. "Nothing official. But the rumors say they want us to give up the outer colonies completely, just hand them over without a fight." Sarah walked to the main screen and looked out at the peaceful scene around Kepler Station. Ships from a dozen different worlds moved in careful patterns, following traffic control signals. Traders, diplomats, and tourists all mixed together in the giant marketplace that had become the heart of Alliance space. The Alliance was built on the idea that different species could work together better than they could work alone. The Altarians had the best navigation technology in the galaxy. The crystalline Geltar could create energy shields that nothing could break through. The water-breathing Merdani had fleets that moved like schools of fish, perfectly coordinated across vast distances. And humans? Humans were the newest members. Barely accepted into the Alliance 5 years ago, most species saw them as useful but not particularly special. Humans were good at building things quickly and solving problems in creative ways, but their technology was still behind most Alliance standards. Their ships were tough but simple. Their weapons were basic but reliable. Sarah remembered her first meeting with Alliance leaders. Admiral Thekvar of the Altarians had been kind but clearly unsure about these new Terrans. He had asked her what humans could offer that other species could not. "We're survivors," she had said simply. "We're good at adapting to new situations." The Admiral had smiled, or at least made the Altarian expression that meant the same thing. "Survival is a valuable skill," he had agreed. "But we hope you will find that survival is easier when you have friends." That conversation felt very important now, with the Vex making threats and the Alliance trying to figure out how to respond. The problem was that the Alliance had been peaceful for so long that most species had forgotten how to fight wars. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not combat. Their weapons were meant for defense only. The Vex knew this. They had been testing Alliance defenses for months, attacking small outposts and seeing how the Alliance would respond. Each time, the Alliance had tried to solve the problem through negotiations and trade agreements. Each time, the Vex had taken what they wanted and then demanded more. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "we're getting a priority message from the Altarian flagship." "Put it through," Sarah said. The main screen changed to show Admiral Thekvar. The Altarian looked older than Sarah remembered, with new stress lines around his large dark eyes. His blue-gray skin had a tired look that made Sarah worry about his health. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying the musical quality that all Altarians had. "I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's meeting. How are your people preparing for the negotiations?" Sarah chose her words carefully. She knew that other Alliance members sometimes listened to communications between ships. "We're ready to support whatever the Alliance decides, Admiral. Earth stands with our friends." Thekvar nodded slowly. "That is good to hear. I fear that tomorrow will not be like our usual diplomatic meetings. The Vex seem to have lost patience with peaceful solutions. What do you think they'll demand this time? Everything, Tekvar said quietly.
Our intelligence suggests they want the Alliance to surrender completely.
They see our peaceful nature as weakness. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. And if we refuse? Then I fear we may finally see what the Vex do to worlds that oppose them. Tekvar paused, looking directly at Sarah through the screen. Captain, I know that humans are still new to our alliance, but I want you to know something. The Altarian people consider Earth to be our closest friends. Whatever happens tomorrow, please remember that. The connection ended, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. She had a feeling that Admiral Tekvar was trying to tell her something important, but she could not figure out what it was. The next day, the main conference room on Kepler Station was filled with representatives from all Alliance species. Sarah sat with the small human delegation, watching as beings of different shapes and sizes took their places around the large circular table. Some breathed air like humans did. Others wore special suits filled with water or other gases their bodies needed. When War Prime Zethak entered the room, the temperature seemed to drop. The Vex leader was nearly 3 meters tall with a hard shell that looked like black metal. His forearms ended in claws that could probably cut through steel, and his large compound eyes seemed to look at everything at once. Behind him came a group of smaller Vex warriors, all armed and dangerous-looking. Alliance leaders, Zethak said, his voice coming through a translator device. I come with a final offer of peace. The Alliance president, an elderly Jeltar named Crystal Singer Veltar, responded with the calm dignity her species was known for. We welcome all peaceful discussions, War Prime. What terms do you propose? Zethak's laugh sounded like metal scraping against stone. Terms you misunderstand. I offer you the chance to surrender your outer territories to the hegemony without bloodshed. In return, we will allow your core worlds to continue existing under our protection. Protection from what? Asked Admiral Tekvar. From us, Zethak said simply. Your alliance has grown soft over the centuries. You have forgotten that space is dangerous, filled with predators. We are offering to be your predators instead of your destroyers. Crystal Singer Veltar's crystal body began to glow with the anger that Jeltar rarely showed. The Alliance does not negotiate with threats, War Prime. We suggest you reconsider your approach. Zethak turned his huge head toward the human delegation. His compound eyes focused on Sarah, and she felt like a small animal being studied by a hungry beast. And what do the pet mammals think, he asked. Do the Terrans have an opinion on matters of war? Sarah stood up slowly, feeling the attention of the entire room. We think, she said carefully, that threats are usually made by those who are afraid of fair fights. The room went completely silent. Zethak stared at Sarah for a long moment, then began laughing again. Fair fights, he said. Your species has ships that are barely fit to leave your home system. Your weapons are primitive. Your entire fleet could not stand against one of our battle groups. What could Earth possibly do in a real war? Sarah looked directly into his alien eyes. I guess you'll find out if you keep pushing. Zethak's laughter stopped. For a moment, something that might have been uncertainty flickered across his features. Then he turned back to the Alliance leaders. You have 3 days to consider our offer, he said. After that, we will take what we want by force. As the Vex delegation left the room, Sarah noticed that several Alliance representatives were looking at her with expressions she could not read. She had a feeling that her words might have consequences she had not intended, but as she thought about Admiral Tekvar's friendship and the peaceful life the Alliance had built together, she realized she meant every word she had said. The Vex wanted to find out what humans could do in a war. Sarah just hoped they were ready for the answer. 3 days passed in tense silence. Alliance leaders worked around the clock, trying to find a peaceful solution to the Vex demands. Some suggested giving up the outer colonies to save the core worlds. Others wanted to fight. But their military advisors painted a grim picture of Alliance defenses against Vex forces. Captain Sarah Chen spent those days coordinating with Earth Command, sending reports and receiving instructions through encrypted channels. The human government was taking the threat seriously, but like the rest of the Alliance, they seemed to believe that diplomacy would eventually win out. Sarah was on the bridge of the Harmony when everything changed. It was Lieutenant Torres who first noticed the problem. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures across multiple sectors. Something big is happening. Sarah moved to the sensor station and looked at the displays. What she saw made her blood turn cold. Hundreds of Vex ships were dropping out of hyperspace at 7 different Alliance worlds simultaneously. This was not a negotiation or a show of force. This was a coordinated attack designed to hit the Alliance's strongest defenses all at once. "Get me Alliance Command," Sarah ordered. Priority channel. The main screen filled with chaos. Admiral Kesk of the Merdani was shouting orders while water sprayed from damaged pipes behind him. His flagship was clearly under attack. "All Alliance vessels," he was saying. "The Vex have launched simultaneous assaults on Zeltar Prime, Merdani Deep, Altair Colony, and 4 other worlds. We are coordinating defensive responses, but they have overwhelming numbers." Sarah watched in horror as the tactical display showed the scope of the Vex assault. They had not just brought large fleets. They had brought the right kinds of weapons for each target. At Zeltar Prime, they were using quantum disruptor cannons that could break through the crystalline being's famous energy shields. Against the Merdani underwater cities, they had deployed pressure bombs that could crush even the deepest ocean habitats. "They've been planning this for months," Commander Park said quietly. "They studied each species and figured out exactly how to hurt them the most." The worst reports came from the Rim worlds, where smaller Alliance colonies had no real defenses at all. The Vex were not taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They were simply destroying everything they found, turning entire settlements into burning ruins from orbit. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah and her crew watched the Alliance's military forces get systematically destroyed. The Vex strategy was brutally effective. They had identified the most dangerous Alliance species first and focused all their firepower on eliminating them completely. The Zeltar, masters of defensive technology, were overwhelmed by weapons specifically designed to bypass their shields. Their beautiful crystal cities, which had stood for thousands of years, cracked and fell like broken glass. The Merdani fleets, famous for their perfect coordination, found themselves fighting swarm attacks that came from too many directions to handle. Their ships, designed to work together like a single organism, became confused and easy targets when the Vex jammed their communication networks. But the worst news came from Tau Ceti Prime, the Altarian homeworld. Sarah was trying to coordinate rescue missions for Alliance survivors when Lieutenant Torres called out from his station. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Thekvar. Audio only, very weak signal. Put it through," Sarah said immediately. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then Admiral Thekvar's voice came through, broken and desperate. "This is Admiral Thekvar of the Altarian Defense Fleet," he said. "Tau Ceti Prime is under massive orbital bombardment. We have lost our shield generators and our shipyards. The Vex have brought planet-killer weapons." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. "Admiral, can you evacuate the population?" "Negative," Thekvar replied. "They are jamming our transport systems. We have 2.3 billion civilians trapped on the surface." His voice cracked slightly. "Captain Chen, I need you to know that the Altarian people have always considered humanity to be our truest friends in this alliance. Please remember us. Please remember this day." The transmission dissolved into static. Then the sensors detected something that made everyone on the bridge go silent. The massive energy signature of Tau Ceti Prime was changing, growing brighter and more chaotic. "They're glassing the planet," whispered Torres. "The Vex are destroying the entire surface." Sarah stared at the sensor readings, watching as a world that had been home to billions of Altarians turned into a ball of molten rock. Admiral Thekvar, who had welcomed humanity into the alliance with kindness and friendship, was gone. His people, who had shared their navigation technology freely with other species, were gone. Their ancient culture, their art, their music, all of it was disappearing in a cloud of superheated atmosphere. "Captain," Park said softly, "we're getting reports from the other attacked worlds." Sarah forced herself to listen to the updates, even though each one felt like a knife in her heart. 5 of the 12 Alliance species had been completely wiped out in less than 12 hours. The Korathans, peaceful traders who had never hurt anyone, were extinct. The singing crystals of Velnash, whose music could heal emotional wounds, would never be heard again. Entire civilizations had been erased as if they had never existed. 2 more species had surrendered after seeing what happened to the others. The hexapods of Rigel and the plant beings of Garden World had sent messages of complete submission to the Vex, begging for mercy. The remaining Alliance forces were scattered and demoralized. Captain Sarah Chen found herself in command of one of the largest surviving groups, a mixed fleet of about 40 ships from different species, all that was left of the once mighty Alliance Navy. As she reviewed the casualty reports, Sarah realized that the Vex had made their message very clear. This was not about territory or resources. This was about showing the galaxy what happened to anyone who opposed them. They wanted every surviving species to spread the word that resistance was hopeless. "Captain," Torres called out, "we're receiving a general broadcast from the Vex fleet." "Show me," Sarah said. War Prime Zexthak appeared on the main screen, his compound eyes glittering with satisfaction. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridges of several Vex warships, all celebrating their victory. "People of the former alliance," he began, "you have seen what happens to those who refuse the generous offer of the hegemony. Your strongest warriors are dead. Your most advanced worlds are ash. Your fleets are broken." He paused, seeming to look directly at Sarah through the screen. "Any surviving military forces have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Any worlds that resist will share the fate of Tau Ceti Prime. The age of your weak alliance is over. The age of Vex dominance has begun." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah's bridge in shocked silence. "Orders, Captain?" asked Commander Park. Sarah looked around at her crew, humans who had joined the alliance because they believed in cooperation and peace. They had watched their friends and allies get murdered by a force that seemed unstoppable. The logical thing to do was surrender and hope for mercy. But then Sarah remembered Admiral Tekvar's final words. "Please remember us. Please remember this day." She thought about the Altarian children who had sent drawings to Earth schools, showing humans and Altarians playing together under alien stars. She thought about the Geltar scientists who had shared their crystal-growing techniques to help human farmers. She thought about all the small kindnesses and friendships that had made the alliance more than just a political agreement. "Get me a priority channel to Earth Command," she said finally. "Full encryption, maximum security." "Sarah," Park said quietly, "what are you thinking?" Sarah looked at the tactical display, where red markers showed the positions of Vex fleets across Alliance space. They were strong and confident, spreading out to occupy the worlds they had just conquered. They thought the war was over. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that the Vex made a big mistake." "What mistake?" Sarah turned to face her crew, and they saw something in her eyes that they had never seen before. It was cold and hard and dangerous. "They killed our friends," she said. "All of them. And they think that makes them safe." The priority channel to Earth opened, showing Admiral Rodriguez of Earth Defense Command. His face was grim but determined. "Captain Chen," he said, "I assume you've seen the reports from the Alliance worlds?" "Yes, sir. Admiral Thekvar and the entire Altarian population are confirmed dead. The Geltar, Corathans, and 3 other species have been completely eliminated." Admiral Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Captain, I'm about to give you orders that are classified at the highest levels. What I'm about to tell you must never be shared with any non-human personnel." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Understood, sir." "The Prometheus Protocol has been authorized by Earth government. All Shadow Fleet assets are being activated immediately. Admiral Wolf is taking command of combat operations." Sarah's eyes widened. She had heard rumors about something called the Shadow Fleet, but she had assumed they were just stories told by military personnel who wanted to feel important. "Sir, I need to know, is the Shadow Fleet real?" Admiral Rodriguez smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Captain, the Shadow Fleet is very real, and the Vex are about to find out that humanity has been preparing for this day since we first left Earth." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Earth was not planning to surrender. As she looked out at the wreckage of Alliance space, Sarah felt something she had never felt before. It was not anger or sadness, though she felt both of those things too. It was something deeper and more dangerous. It was the feeling of a species that had been pushed too far. The Vex had wanted to see what humanity was really capable of in a war. They were about to find out. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the encrypted message that had just arrived on her personal terminal. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her hands shake slightly as she read them again. "Prometheus Protocol is authorized. Admiral Wolf has operational command. God help us all." Rodriguez Sarah had been in Earth's military for 15 years, and she had heard whispers about Admiral Marcus Wolf in the darkest corners of military installations. Some said he was a war criminal who had been quietly retired after the Mars Rebellion. Others claimed he was running secret weapons projects in the outer system. Most people assumed he was dead. Now Sarah was learning that all the rumors had been true, and somehow that was the most terrifying thing of all. She locked her office door and activated the privacy screens that would prevent anyone from listening to her conversation. Then she opened the secure channel that Admiral Rodriguez had given her. The face that appeared on her screen was older than she expected. Admiral Wolf looked like he was in his 70s with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. But there was something about those eyes that made Sarah understand why people whispered about him in dark corners. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I assume Admiral Rodriguez has briefed you on the basic situation. He mentioned the Prometheus Protocol and the Shadow Fleet, sir. But I don't understand what either of those things actually means." Wolf nodded slowly. "That's because we've spent 30 years making sure that no one would understand, including most of Earth's government and military. Captain, what I'm about to tell you will change how you think about humanity's place in this galaxy. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah thought about Admiral Thekvar and the burning ruins of Tau Ceti Prime. "Yes, sir. I'm prepared. Good." Wolf leaned back in his chair. "Captain, when humanity first made contact with the Alliance, our leaders made a decision that seemed very wise at the time. We agreed to adopt the Alliance's peaceful philosophy and to limit our military development to defensive purposes only. That's what I was taught in the Academy." "Sir, what you were taught was a lie," Wolf said bluntly. "Oh, it's what most people believed, including most of our politicians and military officers. But a small group of us remembered something important about human history." Sarah waited for him to continue. "Peace never lasts, Captain. Throughout human history, every period of peace has eventually ended in war, and the societies that survive are the ones that prepare for war even during peacetime." Wolf touched a control on his desk, and Sarah's screen filled with technical specifications for ships she had never seen before. They looked nothing like Alliance vessels with angular designs that seemed built for one purpose only. While the Alliance was teaching us about cooperation and trade agreements, a select group of Earth's military and industrial leaders were developing what we called the Shadow Fleet. Ships that were never officially built, using technology that was never officially developed, crewed by people who officially don't exist. Sarah studied the ship designs with growing amazement. These were not the peaceful exploration vessels that Earth had been building for Alliance service. These were pure warships, designed with every weapon system and defensive technology that human engineers could imagine. "How many ships?" she asked. 847 combat vessels, Wolf replied, plus support ships, manufacturing facilities, and research stations. We've been building them in the dark spaces between star systems, using resources that were officially listed as lost to mining accidents or equipment failures. Sarah felt like the universe had suddenly become a much more dangerous place. "Sir, why wasn't I told about this? Why isn't this information shared with Alliance Command?" Wolf's expression became very serious. "Because, Captain, these ships violate 17 different Alliance treaties on weapons development. The Shadow Fleet represents humanity's darkest military technologies. We have weapons that the Alliance banned centuries ago, defensive systems that most species would consider acts of war just to possess." He changed the display to show a massive vessel that dwarfed anything Sarah had ever seen. It was black as space itself, with weapon emplacements that looked like they could crack planets. "This is the ANS Wrath of Terra, the flagship of our Dreadnought Squadron. She carries planet-killer weapons, Captain, the kind of weapons that could turn Tau Ceti Prime into an asteroid field with a single shot." Sarah stared at the image, trying to process what she was seeing. "Sir, if we have this kind of firepower, why didn't we use it to help the Alliance?" "Because using it would have meant revealing it," Wolf replied. "And revealing it would have meant explaining to our Alliance friends that humanity never really abandoned its warlike nature. We just hid it better than anyone imagined." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Alliance would have expelled us. They would have seen us as a threat to galactic peace. "Exactly. And they would have been right to do so." Wolf leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Captain, the Alliance species are genuinely peaceful. They've evolved beyond the need for large-scale warfare. But humanity, we're still the same species that fought 2 world wars with primitive technology and nearly destroyed our own planet. We joined the Alliance hoping to become more like them, but we never stopped being what we are." Sarah thought about all the Alliance friends she had made over the years. Admiral Thekvar, who had trusted humanity completely. The Geltar scientists who had shared their most advanced technologies without hesitation. They had welcomed humans as fellow beings of peace and cooperation. We lied to them, she said quietly. All this time we've been lying about who we really are. Yes, Wolf agreed. And now they're dead because we weren't there to protect them with the weapons we kept secret. The weight of that statement settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. The Alliance had fallen because its strongest member had been hiding its true strength, too afraid of rejection to reveal what it could do. What's the plan now, sir? Wolf's smile was cold and sharp. Now, Captain, we stop pretending to be something we're not. The Vex wanted to see what humanity looks like in a real war. They're about to get exactly what they asked for. The display changed again, showing fleet movements and battle plans that took Sarah's breath away. The Shadow Fleet was already moving into position, using stealth technology that would keep them hidden until they chose to reveal themselves. Our intelligence indicates that the Vex have spread their forces across Alliance space to occupy the worlds they conquered. Wolf continued. They think the war is over, so they're not expecting a counterattack. That's going to be their first mistake. What's their second mistake? Sarah asked. Wolf's expression became deadly serious. They killed our friends, Captain. They murdered billions of beings who trusted humanity to protect them. The Vex think that makes them strong, but they don't understand what they've actually done. What have they done? They've reminded humanity that we're not actually a peaceful species, Wolf said. We're predators who learn to cooperate. And when our pack is threatened, we become something that the galaxy hasn't seen for a very long time. Sarah looked at the battle plans again, noting the level of detail and preparation that had gone into them. How long have you been planning this? 30 years, Wolf replied. Ever since we first learned about the Vex and their expansion patterns, we knew that eventually someone would challenge the Alliance's peaceful philosophy with pure force. We just didn't know it would cost us so many friends. The conversation was interrupted by an alert signal. Wolf checked his displays and nodded with satisfaction. Captain, the first phase of our operation is about to begin. I'm sending you new orders and access codes that will allow you to coordinate with Shadow Fleet assets. Your ship will serve as a liaison between our forces and any surviving Alliance vessels. What should I tell the Alliance survivors about the Shadow Fleet? Wolf considered this for a moment. Tell them the truth, Captain. Tell them that humanity has been preparing for this day since we first left Earth. Tell them that we kept secrets because we were afraid they wouldn't accept us if they knew what we really were. He paused, looking directly at Sarah through the screen. And tell them that we're sorry it took the death of their worlds to make us stop hiding who we are. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with the knowledge that would change everything. She thought about Admiral Thekvar's final message, asking her to remember him and remember the day the Alliance died. She would remember, and she would make sure that the Vex remembered too. An hour later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Harmony looking out at what remained of the Alliance fleet. 43 ships from 6 different species, all that was left of a civilization that had lasted for 3 centuries. Captain, Commander Park said quietly, Earth Command is asking for an update on our status. Sarah took a deep breath. It was time to stop lying to her friends. Open a general channel to all Alliance vessels, she ordered. I need to tell them something important. The main screen filled with faces from different worlds, Merdani admirals with their gill slits fluttering nervously, hexapod commanders who had surrendered and then changed their minds, plant beings whose leaves rustled with anxiety. Alliance commanders, Sarah began, I need to inform you that Earth has been keeping secrets from our allies. Important secrets about our military capabilities. The alien faces showed confusion and concern. They trusted humanity even now. For the past 30 years, Earth has been secretly developing advanced weapons and warships in violation of Alliance treaties. We have a hidden fleet that we call the Shadow Fleet, with technology that most Alliance species would find frightening. The confusion turned to shock and betrayal. Sarah could see the hurt in their eyes, and it made her want to cry. We kept these secrets because we were afraid you would reject us if you knew that humanity had never really abandoned its warlike nature. We wanted to be like you, peaceful and civilized, but we never stopped being what we are. An old Merdani admiral spoke up, his voice carrying the sadness of his species. Captain Chen, Are you telling us that humanity has been lying to the Alliance for 3 decades? Yes, Sarah said simply. We have, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm also telling you that the Vex made a terrible mistake when they killed our friends. She looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words would be recorded and remembered. The Shadow Fleet is real. Our weapons are real, and we're about to show the Vex what humanity looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. As the shocked faces of her allies filled the screen, Sarah felt something she had never felt before. It was the feeling of a species that had finally decided to stop hiding from itself. The Vex had wanted to see humanity at war. They were about to get their wish. War Prime ZXTAC stood in the command center of his flagship, the Dominant Claw, watching his forces spread across the conquered Alliance territory. His compound eyes gleamed with satisfaction as reports came in from occupied worlds. The resistance had been even weaker than he had expected. War Prime, his communications officer, reported, "The human survivors are still broadcasting surrender requests. Should we respond?" Gaidak made the chittering sound that passed for laughter among his species. "Let them wait. I want them to understand their complete helplessness before we decide their fate." He had been particularly pleased with the destruction of Tau Ceti. Prime, the Altarians had always been the most respected species in the Alliance, and their complete annihilation had sent exactly the message he wanted. No world was safe from Vex power. No species was too valuable to destroy. War Prime called his tactical officer. "I'm detecting hyperspace signatures at the edge of the Vex-controlled zone. Multiple contacts moving fast." ZXTAC moved to the sensor station with the fluid grace that made Vex warriors so dangerous in close combat. "Show me." The tactical display lit up with red markers indicating unknown ships dropping out of hyperspace. XTAC studied the readings with growing interest. The ships were large and moving in tight formation, but their energy signatures were unlike anything in the Vex databases. "Are these the remaining Alliance forces?" he asked. "Negative, War Prime. These signatures don't match any known Alliance vessel types, and there are too many of them. I count over 200 ships in the first wave." Sithak felt the first stirring of unease. The Alliance was broken and scattered. Where could such a large fleet have come from? "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "I want to know who dares to approach Vex territory." The main screen filled with the image of a human face, but this was not the frightened diplomatic captain he had met days earlier. This human was older, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through him. Behind the human, Zixthak could see the bridge of a warship unlike anything he had ever encountered. "I am Admiral Marcus Wolf of the Earth Shadow Fleet," the human said, his voice calm and steady. "You are War Prime Zixthak of the Vex Hegemony." "I am," Zixthak replied, his confidence returning. "And you are trespassing in territory that now belongs to the Hegemony. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The human's expression did not change. "War Prime, 3 days ago your forces murdered 2.3 billion Altarians. You glassed their homeworld and broadcast their deaths across the galaxy as a message of terror. The Altarians chose to resist the inevitable," Zixthak said. "Their fate serves as a lesson to others who might make the same mistake." "Yes," Admiral Wolf agreed. "It does serve as a lesson, but I don't think you understand what lesson it teaches." Before Zexthak could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm, "War Prime! More ships are dropping out of hyperspace. Hundreds of them. They're surrounding our positions." Zexthak spun to look at the tactical display and felt his confidence begin to crack. The red markers were multiplying rapidly, showing human ships appearing in every sector of Vex-controlled space. These were not the simple exploration vessels that humanity had shown to the Alliance. These ships radiated power and menace in their very design. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Human technology is primitive. Their fleets are small." Admiral Wolf's voice came through the speakers with deadly calm. "War Prime, humanity has been a member of the Galactic Alliance for 5 years. Before that, we spent 50,000 years learning how to kill things that were bigger and stronger than we were. Did you really think we forgot how to do that in 5 years?" Zexthak's tactical display showed human ships moving into attack formation with a precision that rivaled Vex military efficiency. But these were not defensive maneuvers. They were the movements of predators positioning themselves for the kill. "This is impossible," Zexthak said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Alliance banned the development of advanced weapons. Your ships cannot possibly..." His words were cut off by an explosion that shook the dominant claw from stem to stern. On the tactical display, one of his escort cruisers simply vanished, turned into expanding debris by a weapon that had fired from beyond sensor range. War Prime, his weapons officer reported, his voice tight with fear. That shot came from a human stealth destroyer. We never saw it coming. Our shields didn't even slow the projectile down. Admiral Wolf's face reappeared on the screen, and now Zixtac could see something in those human eyes that made his chitin crawl. It was the look of a predator that had been pretending to be prey. Your forces are currently spread across 7 star systems, Wolf said conversationally. You divided your fleets to occupy the worlds you conquered because you thought the war was over. That was your first mistake. Another Vex ship exploded, then another. Human weapons were striking from impossible distances with impossible accuracy. Zixtac's forces had superior numbers in each individual system, but they were facing enemies that seemed to know exactly where to hit and when. Your second mistake, Wolf continued, was thinking that humanity's peaceful behavior in the Alliance meant we had forgotten how to fight wars. We haven't fought a war in 50 years, War Prime. Do you know what that means? Zixtac was desperately trying to coordinate his scattered forces, but the human attacks were coming too fast and from too many directions. What does it mean? He snarled. It means we've had 50 years to think about how to fight the next one. The tactical display showed a new horror. Massive human dreadnoughts were appearing near Vex fleet concentrations, ships so large they dwarfed even hegemony battleships. One of them, identified as the ANS Wrath of Terra, fired a single shot at a Vex battle station. The battle station didn't just explode, it seemed to come apart at the molecular level, dissolving into component atoms that sparkled briefly in the starlight before dispersing into space. What kind of weapon was that? Zixtac whispered. The kind that the Alliance banned 300 years ago, Wolf replied. The kind that civilized species agreed never to build. The kind that humanity built anyway, because we knew that someday we might need to kill something that couldn't be reasoned with. Across Vex-controlled space, the pattern was being repeated. Human stealth destroyers appeared from nowhere to deliver killing blows to Vex command ships. Human battlecruisers engaged Vex fleets in conventional combat and systematically destroyed them with weapons that ignored shields and armor. Human dreadnoughts eliminated fortified positions with single shots that turned space stations into clouds of dissociated matter. But the most terrifying aspect of the human assault was not their technology, it was their strategy. They were not just defeating Vex forces. They were ensuring that no Vex survivors escaped to regroup. Every battle ended with the complete annihilation of hegemony assets. War Prime, his communications officer called out. We're receiving reports from all sectors. Our forces are being systematically destroyed. The humans aren't taking prisoners or accepting surrenders. Zixtac felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear. Contact the reserve fleets. Order them to converge on our position immediately. War Prime, the reserve fleets are under attack as well. The humans seem to know the location of every Vex asset in Alliance space. On the screen, Admiral Wolf nodded as if he could hear the conversation. We've been watching you for a long time, War Prime. Every ship movement, every supply depot, every communication relay. Did you think we weren't paying attention while you prepared for war? The dominant claw shuddered under another impact, and Zixtac realized that his flagship was surrounded by human vessels that had somehow approached without being detected. The most advanced sensors in the hegemony had failed to track ships that were apparently right next to them. This is impossible, he said again, but now it sounded like a prayer. War Prime, Admiral Wolf said, his voice carrying across space like the judgment of an angry god. You wanted to teach the galaxy about the price of resistance. Consider this your education in the subject. A new group of human ships appeared on the tactical display, but these were different from the others. They were broadcasting on all frequencies, sending the same message in dozens of different languages. For the Altarians, for the Geltar, for every world you murdered. Zixtac watched his mighty hegemony fleet get torn apart by enemies who fought with a cold precision that made Vex brutality seem like a child's tantrum. These humans didn't fight with passion or anger. They fought with the methodical efficiency of a species that had turned warfare into a science. War Prime, his tactical officer reported, our fleet strength is down to 30%. Our command structure is collapsing. The humans are targeting our leadership vessels specifically. How are they identifying command ships?
Stack demanded.
Admiral Wolf answered him. Because we've been studying Vex military doctrine for 30 years, War Prime. We know how you think, how you fight, how you organize your forces. We know which ships carry your commanders and which ones carry your supplies. We know which systems you'll try to retreat to and which weapons you'll use when you're desperate. The truth hit Ziexthak like a physical blow. You've been planning this. All along you've been planning to fight us. Not you specifically, Wolf corrected, but someone like you. Someone who would mistake kindness for weakness and cooperation for cowardice. Someone who would force us to show the galaxy what humanity looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. Another massive explosion lit up, space as a human dreadnought eliminated. An entire Vex squadron with weapons that turned matter into energy. Zexthak's fleet was dying around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. War Prime, his communications officer said quietly. Incoming message from the human fleet. They're offering terms for surrender. Zexthak almost laughed at the irony. 3 days ago, he had been the one offering surrender terms to a broken alliance. Now he was the one facing complete destruction. What are their terms? He asked. Admiral Wolf's face appeared on the screen one final time. Unconditional surrender of all Vex forces. Immediate withdrawal from all Alliance territory. Reparations to be paid to surviving Alliance species. And War Prime Ziexthak to be turned over to face judgment for war crimes. Ziexthak looked around his command center at the faces of his officers. They were all looking at him with expressions he had never seen before. Fear, uncertainty, and the dawning realization that the Vex hegemony was not invincible after all. And if I refuse? He asked. Admiral Wolf's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we continue demonstrating what humanity learned during 50,000 years of evolution. War Prime. We show you why we became the dominant species on a planet full of creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were. On the tactical display, more human ships were appearing, arriving in perfectly coordinated waves that spoke of planning and preparation beyond anything Ziexthak had imagined possible. You have 10 minutes to decide, Wolf said. After that, we stop being civilized. The transmission ended, leaving Ziexthak alone with the knowledge that his empire was dying around him, and there was nothing he could do to save it. The humans had been hiding their true nature for 30 years, pretending to be peaceful explorers while building the most advanced war machine the galaxy had ever seen. Now they had stopped pretending, and the Vex hegemony was learning the price of making humanity angry. 6 months after the Shadow Fleet's first attack, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the last Vex transport ships disappear into hyperspace. The once mighty hegemony was retreating to the far edges of known space, their empire reduced to a handful of systems on the galactic rim. The war had lasted exactly 147 days. The Vex, who had built their reputation on overwhelming force and brutal efficiency, had been systematically dismantled by human forces that seemed to anticipate their every move. It had not been a war in the traditional sense. It had been more like a careful dissection performed by experts who understood exactly how their subject was constructed. Captain, Commander Park said, joining her at the observation window, the final reports are in from Admiral Wolf. The last Vex military installation in Alliance space has surrendered. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained somber. Victory had come at a price that was still being calculated. What's the final count on Vex casualties? Approximately 4.7 million military personnel, Park replied. The Admiral's strategy of targeting command structures and supply lines meant that most Vex forces surrendered once they realized resistance was hopeless. Sarah was relieved to hear that. She had been worried that humanity's first war in 50 years would turn into a genocide that matched what the Vex had done to the Alliance. Instead, Admiral Wolf had conducted a campaign that was ruthless but precise, designed to break the enemy's will to fight, rather than simply kill as many of them as possible. What about War Prime Ziexthak? She asked. In custody aboard the ANS Wrath of Terra. He'll face trial for war crimes once the new Galactic Council is established. The new Galactic Council. That was still hard to believe. In the aftermath of the Shadow Fleet's victory, the surviving Alliance species had voted to restructure their entire government. Earth was no longer the junior partner in a coalition of peaceful explorers. Humanity was now the dominant military power in known space, and everyone was adjusting to that reality. Captain, Park continued, Admiral Wolf is requesting a meeting with you. He's sending a shuttle over from his flagship. Sarah had mixed feelings about Admiral Wolf. There was no question that his leadership had saved what remained of the Alliance and prevented the Vex from conquering the galaxy. But she had also seen the reports from the battlefield, and she knew that humanity had used weapons and tactics that would have horrified their former allies. An hour later, Sarah found herself in the station's main conference room, sitting across from the man who had become the most feared military commander in the galaxy. Admiral Wolf looked older than he had during their first conversation, with new lines around his eyes and gray streaks in his hair that spoke of the stress of commanding a war that could have ended in galactic domination or human extinction. Captain Chen, he said, settling into his chair with the careful movements of someone who had not slept enough in months. I wanted to speak with you before the formal ceremonies begin. What ceremonies, sir? The establishment of the new Galactic Council, the signing of the peace treaties, the formal recognition of Earth as the Alliance's primary military power. Wolf rubbed his temples. The ceremonies that will make official what everyone already knows, that humanity is no longer hiding what it really is. Sarah studied the Admiral's face, trying to read his expression. Are you having doubts about what we've done, sir? Wolf was quiet for a long moment, looking out the conference room windows at the space where Vex ships had once threatened Alliance worlds. Captain, do you know how many Altarians knew how to build warships before the Vex attacked them? No, sir. None. 0. The Altarians had been peaceful for so long that they had actually forgotten how to make weapons designed to kill other sentients. Their entire military was set up for exploration and rescue operations. Wolf turned to face Sarah directly. The Jeltar were the same way. So were the Korathans, the Velnash singers, all of them. They had evolved beyond the need for warfare, Captain. They had become something better than what they used to be. Sarah began to understand where this conversation was heading, but humanity never evolved beyond that need. No, we didn't. We just got better at hiding it. Wolf pulled up a holographic display showing the current positions of Shadow Fleet vessels. Right now we have 847 warships scattered across Alliance space. Ships that can crack planets, burn atmospheres, turn entire star systems into graveyards. We've become the galaxy's apex predator. The weight of that statement settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. And that frightens you? It should frighten everyone, including us. Wolf changed the display to show casualty reports from the recent war. Captain, do you know what our military losses were during the campaign against the Vex? Sarah shook her head. 43 ships damaged, 12 ships destroyed, 8,000 personnel casualties total. We fought a war against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy, and we lost fewer people than Earth loses to traffic accidents in a typical month. The implications were staggering. We're not just stronger than anyone else, sir. We're so much stronger that it's not even a fair fight. Exactly. And that means we have a responsibility that no human government has ever faced before. Wolf stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful traffic around Kepler Station. We have to decide what kind of galactic power we want to be. Before Sarah could respond, the conference room doors opened and a small group of alien dignitaries entered. Sarah recognized Admiral Kesk of the Murdani, Crystal Singer Veltar of the Jeltar survivors, and several other Alliance leaders who had managed to escape the Vex assault. Admiral Wolf, Admiral Kesk said, his gill slits fluttering with the nervousness that water breathers showed in air environments. We came to discuss the terms of the new Alliance structure. Wolf gestured for everyone to take seats around the conference table. Please, Admiral. We have much to discuss. Crystal Singer Veltar's crystal body glowed with the subdued light that indicated serious thought. Admiral Wolf, the surviving Alliance species have voted to accept Earth's leadership in military matters. We understand that humanity's hidden capabilities make this arrangement logical. But, Admiral Kesk added, we want to understand what this new relationship will look like. Will Earth use its power to protect the Alliance, or will we simply be trading one conqueror for another? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah could see the fear in the aliens' eyes. They were grateful for humanity's intervention, but they were also terrified of what they had learned about their former junior partners. Admiral Wolf sat down slowly, choosing his words carefully. Admiral Kesk, Crystal Singer Veltar, I want to be completely honest with you about what humanity is and what we intend to do with our power. He activated a holographic display showing the Shadow Fleet's capabilities in detail. These ships represent the most advanced military technology in known space. We built them in secret because we were afraid you would reject us if you knew what we were really like. We were probably right to be afraid. The alien leaders studied the display with expressions that ranged from awe to horror. Some of the weapon systems showed capabilities that violated every principle of civilized warfare. But, Wolf continued, we also built them because we knew that someday someone like the Vex would challenge the Alliance's peaceful philosophy with pure force. We knew that eventually, you would need protectors who were willing to be monsters so that you could remain civilized. Admiral Kesk spoke carefully. And what do you want in return for this protection? Wolf's answer was immediate. Nothing that you're not willing to give freely. We don't want tribute or territory or political control. We want what we've always wanted. To be accepted as members of a galactic community that believes in cooperation and mutual support. But, Crystal Singer Veltar said, you're so much stronger than the rest of us. How can there be real cooperation when one partner has such overwhelming power? Sarah found herself speaking before she realized it. Because we remember what it felt like to watch our friends die while we were too afraid to help them. The room went quiet. Sarah looked around at the faces of beings whose species had been nearly exterminated, while humanity hid its true capabilities. We lied to you for 30 years, she continued. We pretended to be weak when we were strong, peaceful when we were dangerous. And because of our lies, billions of Altarians died. The Geltar homeworld is a tomb. Entire civilizations were erased while we debated whether to reveal our secrets. Sarah stood up, feeling the weight of representing her entire species. We can't bring back the dead, but we can make sure their deaths meant something. We can build a galaxy where beings like the Vex know that attacking peaceful species means facing humanity's full wrath. Admiral Wolf nodded approvingly. Captain Chen is right. The new alliance will be different from the old one. It will be protected by beings who are willing to do terrible things to preserve peace. But it will still be an alliance, a voluntary association of species who choose to work together for mutual benefit. Crystal Singer Veltar's glow shifted to a warmer hue. And if we choose not to join this new alliance? Then you'll be free to go your own way, Wolf replied. We won't force anyone to accept our protection, but we also won't allow anyone to threaten the species that do choose to work with us. The negotiations continued for several hours, but the basic framework was established in that first meeting. The new Galactic Alliance would be a voluntary confederation protected by human military power. Earth would not rule the galaxy, but it would defend it against anyone who tried to conquer it. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of a new space station, built in orbit around the dead world of Tau Ceti Prime. The station served as a memorial to the species that had been lost in the Vex assault, and as a reminder to the galaxy of what happened to civilizations that threatened the Alliance. She was not alone. Admiral Tekvar's daughter, one of the few thousand Altarian survivors, stood beside her. Tekvar the Younger had been off-world when her homeworld was destroyed, and she now served as the Altarian representative to the new Alliance Council. Captain Chen, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Altarians possessed. Do you think we made the right choice? Accepting humanity's protection, I mean. Sarah thought about that question carefully. I think we made the only choice that made sense. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and peaceful species need protectors who are willing to be dangerous when necessary. But are you worried about what humanity might become? You have so much power now. Sarah looked out at the memorial gardens visible through the station's transparent sections. Flowers from a dozen different worlds grew there, including earth roses that had been planted in memory of Admiral Tekvar and his people. Every day, she admitted. But I'm more worried about what happens if we don't use that power responsibly. The Vex are gone, but there will be others like them. There always are. Tekvar the Younger nodded slowly. My father used to say that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. I never understood what he meant until now. He was a wise being, Sarah said, and he was right to trust humanity, even when we didn't trust ourselves. As they stood together in the memorial station, watching ships from many worlds travel peacefully through space that had once been a battlefield, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. Humanity was no longer the junior partner in a galactic alliance. They were the protectors of a new order built on the foundation of species working together by choice rather than necessity. It was not perfect. Some species remained afraid of human power, while others resented humanity's dominant position. But it was stable, and it was growing stronger each year as new worlds chose to join the alliance rather than risk facing the galaxy's dangers alone. The Vex had wanted to teach the galaxy about the price of resistance. Instead, they had taught the galaxy about the value of having friends who were willing to fight for you. And in the end, that lesson had proven to be far more powerful than any weapon humanity had ever built. The galaxy was learning to live with the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, human ships patrolled the void, ready to remind anyone who threatened the peace why Earth species had become the dominant predators on a planet full of creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than they were. It was a lesson that most beings hoped they would never need to learn firsthand. But for those who did need to learn it, humanity was ready to teach them. After all, they had been practicing for 50,000 years.